Hey guys, welcome back. Trip Coach here with Trip and Farm for poverty where we don't trust, we verify, and operate with integrity and transparency. Today, bringing up an old clip from Jack that I apparently missed, but I think it's just actually the way that Bitcoin goes and the way that just getting deeper into any topic that requires multiple reads and reviews. So they say that's the markings of like good literature or fine art. You look at it the first time and you see one thing, but the more you go back and review it and watch it, you get more and more clarity. And then of course you're at a different point in your life to have more information and have grown and matured. So now you may see it at a different level or a different layer. And that's what I feel the Bitcoin journey is all about. It's like you hear these things, like I've mentioned from Jeff Booth, the natural state of the free market is deflation, that we've only lived in a controlled market. We've never had a free market. All these things, they're very simple phrases to utter, but until you keep going deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole, you may not quite understand it. And I'm going to play this clip from Parker Lewis, but after we go into this. So this clip from Jack has been clipped out multiple times, and he recently just mentioned this clip on his last Jack Mahler's Mailbag Monday podcast. And he said that this had been clipped out, and he referenced this: if you truly understand Bitcoin, it's not a 1% hedge, it's your entire portfolio. And I wanted to go back and find the source material on this, and then I found all these other clips. I didn't actually find his original podcast, which should have been really easy. I even went through a couple of them. He's wearing a pink shirt in his closet, but I think this was not his Mailbag Monday podcast. I think this was somebody else interviewing him. So I didn't get the exact clip, but I didn't get the whole podcast, but this will give you the gist. And then we'll go to the reference material he talks about with Parker Lewis, but it's literally only 53 seconds. And it requires probably multiple pass-throughs to really grasp what he's getting at. But let me play this clip for you.
I do want to fixate again on the reason Bitcoin's selling off. I think it's an important idea by Parker Lewis. Bitcoin's not a hedge. It's a solution. I love that quote. Anyone that understands Bitcoin doesn't take 1% of their portfolio and use it as a hedge, right? Anyone who understands Bitcoin's like their entire portfolio, like me. I only own Bitcoin. And so Bitcoin's not a hedge. It's not supposed to perform well in the early innings of a financial crisis. Because what happens in a financial crisis is everything sells off. So, even before Bitcoin existed in the 2008 financial crisis, gold sold off tremendously before rallying to new highs. And so Bitcoin's not a hedge. Don't evaluate it as an ability to hedge moments like this. It's a solution. It's a replacement. I do want to fixate again on the reason Bitcoin's selling off. I think.
So that main piece, that Bitcoin is not a hedge, it's the solution. And then, like you said, once you understand it, you can't allocate only 1%. And I feel like that was the literal journey I went down. So I first started with shitcoins, or actually I first started with Bitcoin. I understood Bitcoin. I didn't understand Bitcoin. Let me rephrase that. That's a complete better lie. I heard about Bitcoin. I did my maybe 50 hours of research on Bitcoin. Thought I was too late to the party and super smart. So I was like, I'll go for the next thing. So I got into Ethereum and NFTs. And then you're like, oh, I'm too late for that. Ethereum reached all-time highs. So you start chasing shit tokens, ROI, dApps, passive income, all this other shit, right? Then that all blows up and you lose your shirt. And then you come back to Bitcoin and go, okay, what's so significant about this? Why does it keep coming back every 4 years? Why is everything else down against it? I don't understand it. So you do your 50 hours to 100 hours, and then you start allocating your 1-2%. And then after 100 hours, you maybe get to 1,000 hours. And that's where I feel like this is at. Where it's like, once you truly understand it, you cannot allocate only 1% of your portfolio to it. So let's play this original clip from Parker Lewis. He is a hardcore Bitcoin OG, what do you call it? I forgot what they call themselves. Maxi, there we go. I was drawing a blank for some odd reason. So this is all the way back in November 2023.
Do is help explain Bitcoin to people. And over the last 12 to 18 months, really wasn't a source of frustration. It was more that the most common question that I would get was, I thought that Bitcoin was supposed to be a hedge to inflation. We've started to see growing rampant inflation and Bitcoin is going down. Why isn't Bitcoin serving as a hedge to inflation if it's what I was told it's supposed to be? And so the presentation that I crafted was based on an article I'd written early in the year called Bitcoin is Not a Hedge, to help kind of articulate for people, which I think is a common and good question, why Bitcoin is not a hedge, but rather the solution to inflation. And that I basically articulate a case for why Bitcoin can't credibly be a hedge, but that once somebody starts to understand Bitcoin at a fundamental or intuitive level, they see it as far more than just a hedge, and that it being a solution to inflation is that a better form of money is the only thing that can ultimately fix a broken form of money. And that if something like gold or real estate or some other hard asset, or increasingly because of all the money printing, people using equities as quote hedges to inflation, that Bitcoin is fundamentally different and distinct of that. It's designed to ultimately replace money and be a better form of money.
And that's the key. It is like you said, it's a solution. And this goes back to Jeff Booth's thesis and how you cannot fix the problem from within the current system. So Bitcoin was engineered outside the current monetary system, outside the entire economic system. It is literally engineered from the ground up and born on the cusp of the financial crisis of 2008. So you can't look at it through these lens of, oh, it's a hedge against this, against that. No, it's literally, like you said, the solution. And then once you understand that it's the solution and it's created externally from all the fundamental laws and principles that govern the existing model, then you end up with what Jack has in his most recent Mailbag Mondays episode, where he's quote tweeting Mark Moss, who's talking about the death of the 60-40 portfolio. And then you see that Bitcoin is a solution, and there is, as Michael Saylor said, no second best. There is no other option. There's nothing else for you to own. You cannot diversify. What are you diversifying with? You're going to put a little bit of Bitcoin here and then keep all the other shit tokens, which are equities and bonds and real estate, everything that's going up in value simply because the dollar is going up. So when you evaluate it against Bitcoin, it's actually down. Like, that makes no logical sense. So like Parker Lewis and Jack have said, yeah, once you understand it, you cannot simply allocate 1% of your portfolio.
And he's quote tweeting the executive order. I mean, 401ks are comprised of a bunch of crap, a bunch of stock indexes that don't matter and aren't performing, and a bunch of bonds that are getting obliterated. And let's get into the data. Let's get into the scoreboard. You know, this isn't just talk. There's action here. There's data. There's proof of work. This is Bitcoin and gold risk-adjusted returns. Look at all of this crap over here. Look at this. Long-term treasuries. That's what's funding my police workforce while I live in the murder capital of America. What the fuck? Why is that our savings account? Look at this crap. Look at here. Long-term treasuries, aggregate bonds, U.S. real estate. Sweet. Yes. Now teach my children how to become adults and protect me from crime.
Now, just a little context on this. Jack is upset because of what's happening in Chicago and how they are basically in debt and have no way to fund the retirements and all the stuff they owe monies to people for, primarily like in the service work, you know, police officers, teachers, firemen, all that kind of stuff. And what he's showing here is the reason they have no money is because they basically put 25 cents of every dollar instead of like 70, which other cities have done in states, into this savings account for the future for these people. And so one, it's already less than other places. And two, they put it into things that did not yield a return. This 0% is would have broken even, meaning you would put it in there and you got the same amount back. They actually got negative on a lot of these things because long-term treasuries and aggregate bonds and real estate was the backbone of the savings account, so to speak, for these service workers. So he's upset because he says, I think the mayor is talking about taxing people like Jack like 50%. So he's like, well, now I have to move. It's like you created a system and lost a bunch of fucking money, and now you're going to penalize the people that are building and generating wealth to fund this, you know, Ponzi scheme, basically. So that's why he's a little aggravated. But just think about that. Like, this is the fundamental backbone of a lot of 401k plans, of a lot of retirement plans. Everybody, a lot of portfolios have this in it, and it's literally negative return.
Protect me from crime. Unbelievable. Meanwhile, look at the only participant in the top right. The king, lion of the jungle. And here's the thing, guys. People don't want to admit it. Money naturally competes. It does. It's true. There is no second best. There's no such thing. And I've seen people reclip this. I don't know when I did this interview, but I've seen some reclippings of me saying this quote, and so I'll repeat it. When you understand Bitcoin, it's not 1% of your portfolio. I can't stand when people say, no, I totally get Bitcoin, and that's why I made a 1% allocation. It's like, excuse you? So let me get this straight. You figured out that Bitcoin is the best money in human history to have ever existed, and you decided to allocate 1% of your time and energy, your effort, your labor, your future? Either you're an idiot or you're a liar, because you either don't understand Bitcoin and you're lying that you spent the time that you do, or you're an idiot. And when you found the winner, when you found the solution, you took 1%. Why would I allocate 99% to the loser? Explain that to me, smart man. There's one winner. I don't know how else to show this in visual form. There's one thing in the top right. And that's how much.
And that was my eye-opening epiphany moment for me as well. Earlier this year, I got it. And before that, I had, some dollar cost averaging once a month, every 2 weeks or whatever. And I was keeping the rest in my savings account, checking. And it's exactly like Jack said. It's like, wait, if you get Bitcoin, why are you putting anything else anywhere else? If you totally get it, you cannot put it anywhere. Like it'll literally go against your core fundamental beliefs and ideologies. And I literally did exactly what he's saying. I went all in. So now I've shown this to you guys multiple times before, but it's worth re-mentioning. I don't have the numbers up right now, but basically, as I told you guys, I take 100% of my income every month, divide that by the number of days in a month, typically 30. And then every day I buy that amount of Bitcoin, period. And then people are like, well, how do you live? How are you eating and paying for internet and stuff like that? It's like, then I get a loan against my Bitcoin. And that loan I use to actually pay off the credit card. So I'm actually living off of quote unquote debt. I earn points on my credit card each month. And then that entire month's worth of salary and income goes towards Bitcoin. And then from that Bitcoin, I get a loan to pay off each month of things I bought and live off of. Now, the only way that works for me is because I got out of the country, such as the United States, that requires me to use 100% of my income to fund my daily lifestyle. So being able to live somewhere else where I only need 30 to 40% of my monthly income, that means I can afford to take the entire month and still have that 50% LTV ratio. So I know that's not a thing for everyone else, but the whole point of me bringing this together was to show you guys that, yeah, once you get it, you realize that the only risk is not having enough Bitcoin. And before you take that leap of faith, you're like, I don't know, how much can I risk? How much can I allocate? I'll do 10%, I'll do 20%. But like Jack just mentioned, like, you mean to tell me that you figured out what is the absolute best money ever engineered, and you're going to only allocate 5, 10, 20, 30%, and the rest you're going to put into what? Like, there is nothing else. Like you said, there is no second best. You can do gold. I know some people in the chat mentioned that they hold physical gold. Yeah, I'm all about that. That's great. The only reason I don't hold physical gold is because I like to travel. Like, I'm not in the same country I was in literally 2 months ago. And then 2 months before that, I was in another country. And then before that, so the problem with that is traveling. It's like, yeah, I can't take that gold with me. So if I was just stacking more and more gold bars, it's like, well, I have to actually have a physical location to keep those gold bars. And yeah, you can have a, what do you call that? A safe deposit box or whatever. But then you got to trust the banks. The whole point of Bitcoin is self-sovereignty, right? So I'm not against it. It just doesn't support my lifestyle. But after that, there is nothing else to own. And the NASDAQ and S&P 500, when you literally evaluate them in Bitcoin terms, they're down like 83% against Bitcoin. The only reason they sit all the way up here is because the inflation or debasement of the currency is being cycled back into this. We showed this on this channel that we got from Jack when he was doing his walkthrough. All of these foreign countries were taking their earnings and recycling them back into the S&P 500. And typically, when you actually look at the S&P 500, it's only the Magnificent Seven that is up. So the other 493 in the S&P 500 are actually not doing shit. It's only the top 7, and those are all tech stocks. So you're down here at 10% with the Mag 7, somewhere around 15 with the NASDAQ, and that is just barely beating out inflation. That was something he showed in this video here, where the Fed actually said that the actual inflation rate is closer to 8.25 when they evaluated gold. So they came out and said the quiet part out loud. It's like, yeah, sorry, we've been lying to you guys about 2% inflation. It's actually 8.25 over the last 30 years. So that means if you're holding anything other than tech stocks with the rest of your portfolio, you got shit. You got wrecked. And there is only one outlier, and that's Bitcoin. So again, once he made that statement of, I totally get Bitcoin and I'm only going to allocate 1%, it's like, yeah, I understand that now, because that's where I was at with my 50 to 100 hours of evaluating Bitcoin. But once I really did get it, and I could honestly look myself in the mirror and say that, I went all in, and I've been all in ever since. I'm sad that it took me this long to figure this shit out. I've been making content on this channel 4 years straight, 3 years straight. I forgot what it is. I think it's only 3. But diving into crypto and watching other people like Jack and all that, and I completely missed it all the way until January of this year. So I just finally started understanding what it means to be a Bitcoin maxi. I don't even want to call it that, but just understanding how broken the money is and understanding that moniker that Bitcoin fixes everything. It's like, yeah, I get it now. It makes total sense. So hopefully you guys will come to this understanding as well and realize that the biggest risk to your future economic wealth and energy and stability is not holding enough Bitcoin. And then the other risk is diversifying into other assets or shit tokens or whatever that you think are going to be a hedge, because there is no such thing as a hedge. There is only one solution, because everything else is built on the fundamental principles to sustain that fiat Ponzi pyramid. So nothing else matters. I can argue gold, you can have that, but Bitcoin is the one digital sovereign asset that you can take that's borderless and trustless. All right, that's all I got for this video. Smash that HBO special, help brother out, like, subscribe, comment down below, and until next time, live daily and achieve your impossible. See ya.